station. For those live on Discord, Caleb will monitor your comments and questions and interject those at the appropriate time. Just as a reminder, the purpose of this Applied Theology podcast is to take what we learn in Scripture and apply it to our everyday life. As iron sharpens iron, we are sharpening each other and keeping in mind our goal to align our lives with that of God and His Word. But before we begin, let's have an opening prayer. Dear great and powerful Heavenly Father, we're coming to you tonight to help guide us through this podcast and to learn more from your Word, and then be able to apply what we learn in your Word to our lives here today. We thank you, though, especially for your Son, Jesus, for without His willingness to come down and sacrifice for our sins, none of this would even be possible. Thank you so much, and in His name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So our objective for this topic is to frame how Christians should biblically see nations, not as the ultimate authorities, but as instruments under God's rule. This truth should create both humility and responsibility. Two things we plan to prove by the end of the study. Number one, that nations exist, rise, and fall under God's authority. That political power is real, but it is never the ultimate. Number two, if God rules nations, then political engagement is not optional. It's stewardship under His authority. So these are the things that we really want to try to address in this next topic. And hopefully we get really good feedback, and because like we say, iron does sharpen iron, and the more feedback we get, the sharper we will be. So those are our goals and objectives for this. What should we think about God and how He deals with nations?
Yep, I was just going to emphasize that very last point there. If God rules nations, then political engagement is not optional. It's stewardship under His authority. And I think if we're going to, kind of give a sense for where this class is going, that's going to be an important point that we're going to try to prove, right?
Right. We do have to get into how nations, fall under God's authority first before I think we could get there, obviously, because nations are a political process. I mean, they just are. And I think that word politics is sometimes just kind of a boogie word almost, right? That people don't want to think about because it can get pretty nasty, we could say. But I do think there is a proper way to look at it as a Christian, for sure.
I mean, maybe I'm looking at it a little bit too narrowly, but politics is really the implementation of policy and laws, if you think about it, right? I mean,
correct.
We're electing people that are going to, run this country or run your municipality, your city, your county. But that's really fundamentally what it is, right? It's just the implementation of policy and laws. And of course, I think where we're leaning on is a lot of the laws have a moral implication, right? So,
but like you said, before we can get there, we have to look and see more of a macro look at nations themselves and where they've come from and God's involvement in them, I guess you could say, right?
So this next point, God actively, not passively, governs nations. We've got a couple of passages here we want to refer to. Daniel chapter 2, verses 21, and just the first part of that passage. We read that basically God removes and sets up kings. And the passage reads, He changes times and seasons, deposing some kings and establishing others. So what that tells us is that God is really involved in this process of raising leadership in political positions. Daniel 4:17 reinforces this in a different way. The Most High rules the kingdom of men. The Most High rules the kingdom of men. And if we read the passage here, this announcement is by the decrees of the sentinels. This decision is by the pronouncement of the holy ones. so that those who are alive may understand that the Most High has authority over human kingdoms, and he bestows them on whomever he wishes. I want to emphasize this last point. He establishes over them even the lowliest of human beings. Now, when I first read this passage, I was wondering, is he talking about the kings being over lowly beings, or is he talking about the kings being potentially lowly beings? And in all the commentaries that I looked at, James Fawcett Brown is one of them. It's basically referring to the kings himself. The lowest in condition, it is not one's talents, excellency, or noble birth, but God's will which elevates to the throne.
No better example than David.
Yeah.
Humble beginnings and became one of the greatest kings of Israel. So,
Yeah. What's kind of interesting is we usually find that the kings that the people want, God doesn't want. And the kings that God wants, the people don't want.
That's right, exactly. It's funny even that God did not establish a kingship in the beginning of the nation of Israel, but the people wanted it, and he's like, all right, since you know better, here you go.
Right.
What was it? How many good kings were there in Israel?
Right.
In both Judah and Israel? Not very many, right? So
continuing, Isaiah is interesting. I'm just going to, the whole passage 15 through 23 is really applicable, but I'm going to just select some of the verses that we've got in the presentation here. Just to give you a sense for how God thinks about nations. Verse 15, look, the nations are like a drop in the bucket. They are regarded as dust on the scales. He lifts the coastlands as if they were dust. So he's just reminding of his authority, right? That's what he's doing here. Verse 17, all the nations are insignificant before him. They are regarded as absolutely nothing. What is that telling you? What's your perspective of that?
all the nations are insignificant. That means that we can put such emphasis sometimes on, you know, what is going on in a nation and who's the leadership. And we have to just remember that God is the one that sets nations.
Yeah.
And that as nations start to go away from that authority, things usually don't go well for those nations.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's some direct, it could be direct that God's doing, right? Or it could be just a result of not doing it how God has set it up. And when you don't do that, you will deteriorate into chaos.
Yeah.
And because you're disrupting the order that God has already set up.
Right.
So he could either do either or, but ultimately God is the authority over all nations.
I mean, it just kind of reminds me that I'm not trying to say that the efforts that we put forth are not valuable and that we shouldn't be involved in things, but the ultimate source of our peace and all that is still God, no matter what. So, but it's not saying that nations aren't important.
Right.
In my view, as far as I understand the scriptures are saying, it just means we have to understand the context of authority, you know, and who's really in charge here, and make sure that we're appealing to that authority.
Well, we'll probably get to this much later, but what has God done? How does he want influence in nations today? Well, I think he's charged his followers, right, with that responsibility. And we definitely need to recognize that's how he wants to deal with nations. Okay.
We'll finish here with verses 21 through 23. Do you not know? Do you not hear? Has it not been told to you since the very beginning? Have you not understood from the time the earth's foundations were made? He is the one who sits on the earth's horizon. Its inhabitants are like grasshoppers before him. He is the one who stretches out the sky like a thin curtain and spreads it out like a pitched tent. He is the one who reduces rulers to nothing. He makes the earth's leaders insignificant. And I think he's just establishing his authority over everything. He doesn't want us to get too carried away with anything in the world, and just remember that he is the one that we should be thinking about.
We also need to think about this time period and how nations were during this time and looked at. Like Egypt, the Pharaoh was looked at as a god. Many nations, like their leaders, were looked at as a god, right? And here, the God of Israel is saying, no, I'm over all nations, not just Israel. All nations I'm in charge of.
Yeah.
And I have the authority, not Pharaoh or anybody else.
Well, weren't even the Roman emperors and stuff kind of elevated to that
That's
position
right.
as well?
Yes. And of course, that's a big part of the Moses story, is about God establishing his authority over Pharaoh too, and saying, no, you're not the authority, I am. So you better let my people go, right? Or bad things happen. So
That's right.
So I got a comment here in the chat that says Daniel is a reminder that God rules, and it's to give us hope in our continued mission to do good, not an excuse to do nothing.
okay.
That's well put. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you look at most of the biblical stories, I think we brought this up before, God almost all the time requires human agency. And the first thing that comes to my mind is like Jericho, right? I mean, God could have destroyed Jericho, but he had the people do something to prove their faith before he did any of that stuff. We still know God did it, but he required that Israel march around the city and then on the last day blow the trumpets. And there's example after example where we should appeal to God, but we shouldn't have this, and I think the term may be nihilistic, where we just sit back and say, well, I've prayed to God, we're just going to let him do it. He's never held us to that standard. He's always held us to the standard where we should be involved. I mean, we pray and then we work as hard. I guess I heard the saying that we work as hard as if God's not there, but we pray as hard as we can as if he is.
Well, I mean, you want to go to Daniel and talk about how are we supposed to be in a nation? Just think about Daniel and the very few Israelites that were taken off into Babylon, right? And what did they do? Did they say, oh, well, there's not much we could do because there's only a few of us? That was not an excuse that they gave. They stood firm with God, and just because the culture around them, did not have God as number one, they did. And of course, God protected them supernaturally, right? But at the same time, they were willing to stand and take a stand. And I think that should speak volumes for us. Now, this is kind of getting a little ahead, right? But
again,
we can see that it is important how we act within the nation that we're in. So,
okay.
All right.
Let's go to the next slide. We're just going to summarize this point. So basically, based on these passages, God is not reacting to world events. He is directing them. Leaders are not accidents. They are permitted or appointed within his sovereign plan. So what should we learn from this? This should humble both political optimism and political fear, right?
Explain that one real quick.
Well, the way I take this is that we should not lean on politics to solve our problems. But yet, we should not use it as an excuse not to be engaged in it as well. It's kind of, it's just saying, hey, God, we know you're number one, and we got to make sure we're appealing to you. We got to put you first in everything. But we also have a responsibility to be engaged not only with our family and friends, but our communities, and even in national events. Especially since it's funny because we have the privilege here in this country to do that.
We do.
Back then they didn't have much choice, right, in who was a leader. But in this country, God has blessed us with the opportunity, yet we tend to, almost speak condescendingly to those who might even mention the concept.
Okay.
So, how about you? Would you look at it differently?
Well, kind of appealing back to Daniel again, he was in the very minority of a nation, but he was willing to do things and act in ways that would pleasing to God and not to the political structure. Obviously, Nebuchadnezzar was not very happy with him, and but eventually, Daniel had a great influence on Babylon eventually.
Right.
And that's because he stuck with, lowly Daniel when he was so young and taken off, eventually became one of the leaders and like a great influence on the land. And that land did not recognize God as the creator, but eventually it did have impact, even on a foreign land like that.
Yeah,
So,
Joseph is another example, right?
Joseph's another example
Yep.
in Egypt, that's right.
So this last bullet says, no election outcome is outside God's authority. Well, this is interesting because even if we personally dislike who's in office, what the Bible tells us is God's put them there for a reason. And
There's a
I think
reason.
your example of Babylon, I mean, didn't God use Babylon to give a check to Israel? And they were a very corrupt nation. But yet he used a corrupt leader to check Israel. But then we also know what happens to Babylon in the end anyway, because God still is just. So,
That's right.
all right.
All right, so our next point, nations are accountable to God. Psalm 33:12 says, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord." I think a lot of people like to take that kind of out of context a little bit sometimes, but the idea is, the sentiment is true. It's like, how blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, the people whom he has chosen to be his special possession. Now, obviously, in Psalms, they're talking about the nation of Israel specifically, but I do think that is a standard. I think it's a principle for all time. As a people goes and is closer to God, right, the more blessed that people will be. Because, again, God is the standard. He's the one that sets the order. And when nations fall under that order, good things happen. When you don't go under that order and chaos starts happening, bad things happen. That's just a practical way to look at it too, right? And so, I think that's kind of what it's telling us there. Isaiah 10:1-19 says, "Judgment on Assyria, despite being used by God." So we're not going to read the whole passage here, but the idea here was that God came in judgment onto Assyria, despite at the same time being used by God, which is kind of interesting, right? Assyria became a great nation, and defeated many other nations, but then eventually God comes into judgment on them, just like other nations, like Babylon and Rome, all these nations, right? So I think the point is that God is in control, but that does not advocate responsibility for his people. He is in control, but we still have responsibilities, not only to ourselves, not only to our families, not only to our communities, but to our nation as well. Because God does judge nations. And Amos also talks about, Amos 1:3 and then through 2:16 talks about the judgment on multiple nations, not just Israel. So again, if you go back to ancient times, each nation thought of themselves that each nation had their own gods. Okay, God, and it was mostly gods, plural, right? They weren't monotheistic like Israel was. But see, Israel was unique because God, the actual God, came through them and said, no, there is one God, and he is the ruler of all nations. Not just Israel, but all nations. Israel was supposed to be a light to the rest of the world, right? That was the purpose why God came to those people, to be a light to the world. Of course, many times they failed at that, right? But just like men do. But that was the idea, was that, other nations are going to come to know the God through one nation. And then ultimately, when God himself came and revealed himself through Jesus Christ, that was the ultimate revelation of him to all nations. So, chapter 1, verse 3 says, This is what the Lord says, because Damascus has committed 3 crimes, make that 4, I will not revoke my decree of judgment. They ripped through Gilead like threshing sledges with iron teeth. So we know very well that God held Israel accountable for what they've done and their sins, right? But here it's also saying it's not just Israel. All nations God holds accountable.
Yep.
And I don't think it's just nations in the ancient times. I think all nations for all time, God does hold accountable. All right, so the remaining scriptures basically say that the same thing, that Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Ekron, and the Philistines, Tyre, Edom, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Judah, Israel, and all the Amorites, God only discriminates against rebellious disobedience. So the nation did this, God came into judgment, right? And it didn't matter if it was the Moabites or the Israelites. He still held them to a standard. I think that's what we're trying to get out of those scriptures, right? God has set the standard, and nations will be judged by that standard.
Yep. And Israel was too.
Even Israel.
Yep. I mean, we
Even
kind
his
of
own
think
people.
Israel was always treated, above and beyond, but they were probably even held to a higher standard in God's eyes because of what they represented. But yeah.
That's right.
So we need to understand that God only discriminates against rebellious disobedience.
And that's at a national level. That's at an individual level too.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, the whole context here is talking about nations and so on.
So the summary of those scriptures, God judges all nations, not just his covenant people. So he is the God of all nations. Being used by God does not exempt a nation from accountability. Again, God had a personal relationship with Israel. And when Israel rebelled, they destroyed basically I can't think of the word now. I love that when it happens. Not the covenant. Well, they destroyed the covenant with God. God didn't do that. And therefore, he judged them for that.
Right.
So what does this mean? This guards against nationalism. No nation, including America, gets a free pass. So are we saying here, I'm asked a question, that God judges America today?
I think so. I think America's on the list.
I think so too.
Yeah.
He judges America. He judges every nation of this world presently.
Yep.
Again, how does he do that? He does it in many different ways in ancient times. I'm sure he does it in different ways today. And I think it's just the fact that we need to recognize that, yes, things matter in this world too. That God does judge nations today, presently, like in this world. And his people, just like the Israelites were his people today need to realize that too. And need to humble ourselves to the fact that no matter what nation we live in, whether it's America or Saudi Arabia, God still expects us and holds us to a standard. To be a light in that nation, no matter what it is.
So what we basically just talked through in this point was that nations are accountable to God. So the very next step is that God uses nations as instruments of his will. So he judges nations, and now we're going to just explore a little bit more deeply that he uses them in his own way to
accomplish his will.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't know about you, but I find, and I'll go through some of these scriptures, but just I was just thinking, I find that he uses other nations to kind of be a check and balance in the world. I mean, it just seems like if a nation ever does rise to the level of super corruption, he creates some nation to keep that nation in check. And I really believe, frankly, that there will always be a place for believers to go. It may not be where you think it is, but anyway, so let's explore this a little bit. God uses nations as instruments of his will. Habakkuk chapter 1, won't read the whole thing, but let's just summarize it here. Habakkuk shows us that when a nation tolerates injustice, God may respond in ways we don't expect, even using other nations to bring correction. But no nation escapes his judgment, and no injustice is ultimately ignored. God is not indifferent to injustice within a nation, but his response may involve using other flawed nations as instruments of judgment, which can be difficult for his people to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Isaiah 45, God's sovereignty raises and uses rulers, even those who don't know him, to accomplish his purposes in direct nations. And I think you brought up a few examples of that already. God alone governs outcomes in history, bringing both blessing and calamity to reveal his authority over all the earth. All nations and peoples are ultimately accountable to him. He alone saves, and every knee will bow to his rule. A lot of good stuff there. I think that first point in Habakkuk kind of got my attention. But I think we've kind of discussed the fact that he will use corrupt nations to, against good nations and vice versa, if he thinks that that's going to be the proper thing to do.
Now, this might be a good point to bring up at this point. Well, let's do the summary first.
Okay.
I have a question.
All right. So, to summarize what we just went through, God even uses pagan or unrighteous nations to accomplish his purposes. God is not absent from national affairs, but he also isn't operating on our timeline or our expectations. And that's where the faith, I think, really has to come in. So what does this mean for us? God's sovereignty does not equal his approval. This is critical for interpreting current events wisely. God's sovereignty does not equal his approval.
Right.
Did you have a question?
So we know God is in control, right? We hear that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we like to think, God is directing the United States sometimes, right? For good, we hope.
Mm-hmm.
But what about nations like Nazi Germany and present-day North Korea? When we think of those nations, right, we think they're pretty corrupt and evil, I would say, as a nation. Does he use them too, is the question.
I think he does. I think it's pretty clear just in the passages we read that God uses righteous and unrighteous nations.
Yeah.
Yep.
Babylon was pretty brutal. They're
The Romans
were brutal. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's hard to, like you said, for I think Christians to understand, right? Mm-hmm. Like,
why would he do that? I mean, why would God,
right.
prop up an unrighteous nation?
Because Nazi Germany, they got power fast, mm-hmm. and it wasn't very long before they were making trouble, mm-hmm. and you just kind of wonder, like, was that to teach the world a lesson about something? What lesson was it to teach, right? We still try to teach it in our history books, mm-hmm. but what kind of lessons are we trying to teach from that?
Yeah.
And I think it's warnings for other nations, isn't it? Like, you go down that path, it's not going to be good for your nation.
Yeah. And
I think these are just things that lessons that as a people in a nation we should learn, right? Mm-hmm. What did Christians do in Germany in the 1930s?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Mm-hmm. Bonhoeffer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bonhoeffer. So, did you want to elaborate on that?
I mean, that could be something for later, but I mean, if you want to talk about it now, Bonhoeffer was. I actually watched a movie about him mm-hmm. too, and read some stuff obviously about him, and I actually taught a Holocaust class in school, and so Bonhoeffer was one of the figures we mm-hmm. talked about, mm-hmm. and he tried to urge the Christian church in Germany, like, look what's going on. We have to stop it now. Mm-hmm. Because the nation is going down this very bad path, this evil path. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people didn't want to be bothered by it. And they thought they could just kind of tune it out, and they didn't think it would go to the extremes that it did. But as we know, and it devolved very quickly, and a lot of people, millions of people, were executed and died due to this nation's policies. And the nation's policies got there, I think, in part because good people did nothing.
Yeah. I mean,
Or not enough good people did something.
so Lutheranism was the primary religion in Germany at the time. And when Hitler was trying to assume power, until he got to the point where he could really exercise it the way he wanted to, they were still a democracy to the extent there was elections. So
Like a
he had to get
republic.
elected, and he had to carry out his plan. And one thing he knew was that he had to influence the churches if he was going to be successful. And so he had campaigns where he was trying to meet with church leadership, and from what I understand, there was about 12 or 13, maybe 1,000 congregations. And the mix, and this is pretty typical in almost any situation, is you'll have the top maybe 10, 15, 20% was for Hitler actually, and they were actually hanging Nazi banners within the church buildings themselves. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you had about 2,000 or 3,000 churches that were saying, no, what Hitler's doing is wrong. And then you had this lukewarm middle. Hitler wasn't worried about the lukewarm middle. He just wanted to get the majority. And then he felt like once he got the majority, then he could force the minority to apply his thoughts,
Ideology.
his ideology.
Mein Kampf.
And so Bonhoeffer saw that, and he was trying to convince the church to step up to the plate because they had an influence on what was going on. I mean, the church was the closest to the people. And I think we find throughout history that the church is often, and when I say church, I'm just saying general, I'm not just saying the Church of Christ or whatever, I'm just saying the church in general.
Those who profess
yeah.
Christ is the Lord.
But leaders know if you can capture the ideology of the culture, then you can carry out your plans, good or bad. And so Bonhoeffer was trying to change people's hearts and minds. He took it to a point where I don't know if many people would. He was involved in one of the attempts
Assassination attempt.
to assassinate Hitler, where they put a bomb in an attaché case underneath his desk. He survived that, and he ended up being caught and killed for what he did.
Wasn't he put in a camp, wasn't he?
No, he was.
Or was he executed?
Yeah, he was executed. He was executed for what he did.
I got a comment here online that says it's not just that they didn't do anything, but they believed a lie. It was the norm for common Germans to believe that Jews were untrustworthy at best and evil Christ killers at worst.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is I think the church to me can, at least the true church, can influence that. If we're teaching on this stuff, it's just like, was it William Wilberforce in England?
Wilberforce, yeah.
I mean, he spent 20 years trying to get slavery banned in politics. And where was the church? I mean, were they talking about it? Because you can get a pretty large constituency pretty quick if you just get the masses. But I think the comment's well taken. You got this lukewarm middle that probably was ambivalent, not really caring much about apathy, I guess you'd call that. And you had this other extreme that was going to support.
And they were the ones believing the lies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get I guess you had their version of the fake news back then.
Their German propaganda was
it was
very potent.
Yeah. And it was the young people too. I mean, I'm talking adolescent kids.
Hitler Youth.
Yeah, the Hitler Youth were used. And it's funny, even today when you look around,
Radicalized.
It's the young and the college age is what a lot of political figures are trying to influence because they don't really have a foundation yet, at least, or they lose it, and they get swayed really easily through emotion.
When you're young, you can definitely be swayed if you don't have a good, solid foundation. And even if you were raised as a Christian, young people are still vulnerable to that
Yeah.
those barbs, right? It's really Satan behind it, right? And I've got 2 in college right now, and that's something that we always constantly have to try to talk to them about things. And hey, what did you professor say anything today? Like, just being aware, because the youth are impressionable more so.
Yeah.
Because they just haven't. I think part of it is the youth are idealistic. So a lot of things that sound good, they're for, even though they have been proven not to work well in reality, right? But they can kind of get into that and be manipulated through that a lot of times. And it's just, that's what the Nazis tried to do to their youth, and it's always something that we have to battle.
Yeah.
In any nation, it doesn't matter, where you are, is that influence that's really coming from Satan. So
I think you make a good point. They capitalize on the fact that a lot of young people are actually looking for a cause.
right,
They're enthusiastic, they're energized, and all you have to do is feed them a lie, and now they're going off the wrong path. So
it's almost natural for that rebellious almost. And it's not like they hate their parents or anything. It's just that, well, my parents have always said this, but now I need to kind of figure out myself, and so they almost have that, well, my parents say that, but let me go over here and start listening to this professor more. And it's just kind of a natural thing sometimes. And some, like I said, we have to guard against it as parents.
yeah, well,
So-
and that's why we need to talk about not only this topic,
Right.
but other things that are close to all of us. I mean, we're all, there's all kinds of topics. We won't go into them on this
right.
particular podcast, but we will eventually. But there's all kinds of things going on around us. And if you're not
yeah.
paying attention, you're not well grounded in Scripture, you're going to be easily swayed to buy into what's being said. I want to make another point, though, too, about Germany. I mean, God has set up nations to keep other nations in check. And one of the things that was going on then, too, is nations were trying to stay out of it too long. And if there was any righteous ounce in you, we should have engaged Germany a lot sooner. I mean, a lot sooner. But people were just kind of
or at
sitting
least
back.
the
And
other European countries.
yeah.
They could have done a lot more than the United States could have at that time.
Yeah. Was it cowardice? Was it fear? Was it some of the ramifications of politics? It's probably a number of things, but
It could have been cowardice. It could have even been an honest thing that they just went through World War One,
yeah,
and they saw the horrors of this new industrialized war, and they didn't want to do that again. They wanted to do everything they could not to do that. But when you do that, and you appease, that's called appeasement, right? It could turn out to be worse. So while you think that you're trying to avoid devastation like World War One, it could allow a strong man to come in, right? And you just keep appeasing until eventually you invade Poland, and that was the red line, and then World War II happens.
right.
Almost like a continuation of World War One. It was really.
Yeah, something a comment here to consider is youth is very good at picking up on hypocrisy. The devil loves to use their good intentions to believe in lies.
Yep. I think we have a question from the audience.
Comment actually.
Okay.
This might sound a little goofy, but I heard this quote from one of my all-time favorite video games, God of War Ragnarok. One of the characters said, "War is a terrible thing, but some things are worse."
Okay. Well, that kind of reminds me of a time for war, a time for peace.
Yep.
That's in Scripture.
Yep. Ecclesiastes.
What does that mean? Yeah, what does that mean? There's a time for war then. Because there's a time for that good people stand up against evil people.
Yeah. And here's the thing is, I think righteous people that are trying to be righteous, and I'm including everyone in this room and everyone on the podcast.
Yes, we know everybody's flawed, right?
Yeah.
Those who try
everyone's trying to be righteous.
Right.
But there's this tendency to just make sure that we're right, before we go into something like that. And I understand that. But if we were only prepared ahead of time, like we've had recent, like COVID and, the George Floyd situations that went on, I think it caught the church by surprise and they didn't know how to respond to it. Now we can recognize that, or we can learn from it and basically learn from it and say, okay, wait, what if this happens again? So we're prepared for it, and we can actually respond so much quicker and save even physical lives, not only spiritual lives, but physical lives.
Oh, there'll be more of that to come, we'll say, in future podcasts.
Yeah. Stay tuned.
All right. The tension. God is sovereign, yet people are responsible. We've alluded to this a little bit already. Right?
A lot, probably.
Probably a lot. So we're kind of jumping ship a little bit, but that's okay.
No, it's all right. It's okay to reinforce it.
Yeah. So, well, here's some scriptures to help back this up, right? Proverbs 14:34 says, the righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any people. So what is your nation promoting? What is it? What laws are allowing what in your nation? Is it a disgrace to your nation, or does it exalt it? So as a people in a nation, those are questions we need to ask ourselves. And I think it's clear God is holding us responsible. Because if not, why would passages be like this, right?
So how does the character of the leader play into that?
The character of a leader?
Yeah.
Explain.
Well, I mean, some people, like in our country where we have the privilege to vote, some put a lot of emphasis on the character of the leader.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Versus the policies.
Okay.
And according to this passage, I'm not being told to take into consideration the leader. I'm told to take into consideration the policy. I think.
I hate to use David over and over again, but
that's a good example.
what was David like?
Yeah, because if CNN was reporting on him,
Back then,
I don't think anyone would vote for him.
Not only, but these things wouldn't have been a lie. They were true. He was a murderer. He was an adulterer.
Yep. His family was a mess.
Yes.
Well,
He had rebellion.
I will say it's a faulty dilemma to say that you can be either the character of the leader or the policies. The correct answer is both.
Well, you would expect that the character of the leader would influence the character of the policy, right? Right. But in King David's case, if you only looked at what
His actions.
I think you could reasonably conclude he wouldn't be a good leader.
What made David King David is when Nathan confronted him with what he did.
It was his humility.
And he said, I was wrong.
Right.
And he humbled himself and corrected those debts.
Yeah.
Now, there was still consequences for those that he had to deal with the rest of his life.
Yeah.
But that's what really made him a good leader, was the humility when he was presented with, you were wrong, right?
I guess what I'm just wondering, and this is a fair question, is ultimately, if God's going to judge a nation, is he going to base it on the character of the leader or the character of the nation?
I could easily see it being both,
Yeah.
realistically.
Yeah.
It could be.
It could be both. Now, yeah, it could be because he could want to punish the leader. But if the nation is righteous in terms of everything else going on, just a question,
I mean, Nebuchadnezzar personally was punished quite severely for his actions, and then his son is the one who was kind of in place when the whole nation toppled.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we need to be thinking about these things, right? I mean, just how does all this work as we read these scriptures? Because so far a lot of things we're talking about, he does implement leaders, but then he judges nations. I would hope that if you elect a righteous leader, that righteous policy would follow, but sometimes there's a little dissonance there, right?
Solomon,
And we don't really know the leaders.
Israel flourished the most they ever did under Solomon.
Yeah.
He was flawed too.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you hope your leader but nobody's perfect on earth.
Yeah.
Not one.
Yeah.
So I think the policies and what the goals are may be more important in a leader, like what his goals are, what he's striving to do in your nation, than his personal action when it comes to the nations. His personal actions are more important when it's talking about between him and God.
Yeah.
Right?
I do think he's still going to be held accountable personally.
He will be held accountable for his personal actions,
But the nation will be accountable for how he implements
how he
stuff.
implements
Right,
his
right,
policies.
right.
Yeah.
And I can't control the person as much as maybe I can influence the nation, right? So
And our nation today, we can have more influence on our leaders than most nations in history,
yep.
right? Because we have that little bit of power, but that little bit of power can build to a lot if it's coalesced.
I
So,
think we have a question from the audience.
okay.
Another comment, I actually wanted to add on to that because that idea that God judges both the leader and the nation especially applies to this country, since we the people are mostly responsible for electing those leaders and electing the people who we follow.
We have some agency in that whole.
We have some.
But it's tough, it's tough because if I haven't seen a leader govern before, I'm almost relying on the leader, the character of the leader to try to figure out what they're going to do. But I can name several presidents where I thought that leader was righteous, yet the nation just went down the tubes. And then I've seen the opposite where the leader was a little bit.
And let's not let us think in America today that when we're saying leaders, we're only talking about the president, because we have different levels of
governors.
government.
Yeah, we got
Different
mayors.
levels, mayors, governors,
Yep.
city councilmen. I mean, even those who run the schools,
Judges.
school board members.
Yep. Oh yeah.
All these are influential, and things that we can influence
Yep.
in our communities and nations and everything. So it's way more than just president.
Yep.
But I mean,
Well, that was
obviously
just
he's
Proverbs.
I know. So what about Deuteronomy 30? God gives nations and citizens a real choice. Obedience leads to life, blessings, and flourishing. Disobedience leads to destruction and loss. Kind of like we've talked about before already, right? Even after judgment, restoration is possible if people genuinely turn back to God with their whole heart and obedience. So we see in Scripture that a people can turn back to God.
A people.
A whole people.
That's
right?
like a purple.
people.
I mean, that's like plural.
Right. Individuals and people. So individuals have to turn back and then influence other people. And then those, groups of people will influence the whole nation. We call that, I think, a present day word we like to use is revival, right? A revival back to God. And that's the thing about the ebb and flows of nations. They're going to go more towards God sometimes in the way than back. Unfortunately, what happens a lot, though, in a nation is that as they go back to God, they don't quite go back all the way that they were before sometimes.
Yeah.
And that it just keeps, as time goes, devolving away.
I think Nineveh was an example of that.
Correct,
They started,
yeah.
They were, but then boom, Yep.
All right, so,
The book of Judges shows that pattern pretty clearly too.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and even like a lot of the minor prophets are addressing nations, right?
Israel, hey, come back to God or else.
Yep.
That's what they were there for. And of course, some prophets were, what's the word? Listened to, but most of them weren't. And a lot of them were persecuted and because people don't like hearing that, that you're not doing right. And so they reject
And those prophets were going right to the leaders. They weren't, I know that they were still evangelizing, right? But they were going right to the leaders because they understood the impact that nations have on peace and all those things
It's
that we strive
interesting,
for.
later when Stephen's talking about the history of Israel and how they rejected the prophets, and even killed them and murdered them. Is that you're an abstinent people, right? He addressed them as a people.
Yep. He blamed them all.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So even after judgment, restoration is possible. I already said that, didn't I? God's expectations are clear and accessible. People are accountable because they know what is right and are capable of choosing it. I
Agency.
mean, we have
even.
choice.
Yeah.
Do we have choice even though maybe, let's say that a law that is unrighteous tells us we have to do something? Do we still have a choice to do what's right? Yes. Because God's law exceeds the man's law. We have to keep that in mind too when we're talking about nations, right?
Right.
As our nation might be going down a wrong path, we have to remember God's law exceeds that law. And that's something we always have to be looking at too. What do we mean when we say a people should turn back to God? Now that's a question I put in there because I think it's a good one to ask for a discussion. So
Figures you'd think it'd be a good question.
what do we
came up
mean
with it.
when we say that people should turn back to God? Thoughts?
Anybody from the audience? What do we mean when we say a people should turn back to God?
That tough, huh? Well, I'll tell you what I think I mean by that, okay? We hear all the time that, revival, right? Or we need to turn back to God. Do we really mean that? Because that's a hard thing. It's not easy. And there are things that we might have to do that are hard. Because once a nation or a people devolve to a certain point, to try to get them back from that takes hard things to do. It's not easy. And unfortunately, a lot of, I guess, the nature of man is not to do hard things. But you have to do the hard things if you want to bring people back to God. Because evil is so easy, right? Like, devolving into that is easy, and it's hard to go back to God, especially in a nation, right? And to try to get people to come back to God. So that's kind of what I was thinking, I guess, of that.
Yeah. I mean, what came to my mind is just, obviously we're kind of focusing on peoples, nations, but this doesn't discount our individual efforts
Right?
to preach the gospel, as well. I don't want to come across like we have to spend all of our time, trying to save a nation per se. I think what you and I are saying is that it's not a either or, it's salvation and, because good works are present in every environment that we encounter. So I look at this as that, we still need to be doing the groundwork, so to speak, and talking to our neighbors, our friends, and our families, and trying to influence people around us, because I still think if you can influence someone's soul, it's the best chance. But we can also, and especially in this country, influence the laws because we know that they're good for everybody. If we really love our neighbor, we should, and we want to show our consideration for them, and we know that what we know is better for even
God's way is the best way.
it's better for everybody. Then why do we only say we have to focus on this and we can't do this? I mean, it's like, why do we even have this separation? I was well, why don't you ask your question and I'll say mine.
Before you ask the question, though, think of it this way: like, even if you're the only one left in a nation who knows God, you need to stand up for God.
Yeah.
And if you're going to stand up for God, by the way, that means you need to know who God is and God's nature. And there's only one way we can know that is through what He's told us about Himself, right? Through Scripture. So you better know the Scriptures and know before you can talk to other people about them.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Question.
So when you mention a nation coming back to God, what's more important, the leaders of the nation or the people of the nation?
Without a shadow of a doubt, the people. Because the people are the one that turned the head of the leaders.
At least in this, yeah,
In any nation.
yeah.
Ultimately,
I mean, you're seeing it in Iran right now.
yes. So, a lot of, like I said, people don't like to do hard things. That's why people get complacent and let dictators run their countries. Because it's hard to overthrow a dictator, right? But ultimately, the power is still in the people. Any people, and even in North Korea, if they wanted to, they could overthrow that dictator, right? They could if they wanted to. Because I don't care how much power a dictator has, ultimately the people have the power. And that's where power is in a nation, is the people.
I got kind of like another follow-up. If a nation is to become wicked, who's more at fault, the people or the leaders? Because I think it's the people in that case.
Again, same thing.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah,
The people are the problem.
That's right.
yeah. No, those are good thought questions because, again, this gets back to, I guess, it's nihilism again. We just think we can't do anything. It's just out of our hands. And
Complacency.
it's usually fear and cowardice that are probably the biggest influences, on us. And, I mean, we all have to think about that too. I mean, if I can help it, I don't want to risk my life to try to preserve our nation. And that's why I think, and I think I can speak for you two as well, that's why we're trying to talk about this, because we can head the destruction off at the pass, because I guarantee you destruction is going to come. Every nation in history has strengthened and then it fell.
Devolves.
Yeah, it devolves. And it's just a matter of when are people going to do something about it. And if we can catch it on the front end and engage like we should, which I believe that we have that responsibility, why do we have to go through all that? But it's like we have a hard time learning that lesson. We always have to wait till things get worse before we start to
Right.
it's like maybe we should have done something 10, 20 years ago, right?
I know that we're going to get to this later, but the founders of our nation that we currently live in, they knew that a republic like they were setting up could only thrive with a moral people. As soon as the majority of this country becomes immoral, it could be one of the most wicked countries to ever exist because of the power that we have politically.
Yeah.
So we need to keep that in mind in our current present nation that we live in, that it can devolve into something very evil, possibly even more evil than Germany was. And the good people of this country need to have influence and bring a revival to the country. I mean, we're supposed to do this in many different ways as a Christian, right? And to let our light shine, to be the salt of the earth, right? And there's many ways we could do that. So,
I think we got one more scripture here. Is it
yes,
Ezekiel?
and Esther.
I wanted to first just mention, you misspelled Esther on the PowerPoint. It says Ezekiel. It looks like it says Ezekiel, but it's supposed to say Esther.
Which one? The Watchman?
Oh, okay.
No. Yeah, no, just on the PowerPoint.
Oh, on the PowerPoint. Oh, gotcha.
Who did that?
No names.
I'm sure that's a good passage.
So I'm actually reading from Esther then,
Yes.
4, right?
Yeah.
4:14. If you keep silent, God will find another way. Who knows if you have come to the kingdom for a time as this? Man, that reminds me of, I'm sorry, I'm going to bring in Lord of the Rings here a little bit.
Okay.
In the first Lord of the Rings, best trilogy ever made, okay?
In your humble
First one,
opinion,
in
yeah.
my humble opinion.
Yeah.
Frodo tells Gandalf that I wish the ring would never have come to me. Right? And it's like almost Gandalf is like talking about Esther here. It's not for you to decide what happens. What you have to decide is what you're going to do with the things that come to you. In other words, there's nothing you can do about the ring did come to you. It happened. What you have to decide is what are you going to do about it. Basically is what he's telling them.
Yeah.
And that kind of reminds me of that right there.
That's a pretty good analogy.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's one of my favorite like quotes of all time in any movie, though, is you can cry about your situation. You can say that, oh, this nation is that, or whoa, whoa, whoa. It's irrelevant. What are you going to do with the time that you're given? And
Yeah,
for
this-
Christians, oh, go ahead.
So this kind of goes to what I guess what was said in Ephesians chapter 2 verse 10. So we are created for His workmanship. We have a job to do. Jesus, when He saw that fig tree that wasn't bearing figs, he cursed it. When in Matthew 7, when Jesus talking about the bearing fruit, we have a job to do. There's a purpose for what we are doing. And if we are not fulfilling that purpose, God will still find a
still
way.
do it.
God will still find a way to make His will happen. But we will end up finding ourselves being passed over and basically burned, just like that fig tree was basically dead.
The chaff and the wheat, I think of too, right? He sifts those who are willing to do something and those who aren't. And the chaff will just be burned. So lots of analogies.
That's yeah. I think sometimes we read through that too quick because we don't like to think God is like that way. I mean, but when I read that, I kind of put myself in the place of that fig tree. And if I'm not bearing fruit, I mean, Jesus is sending a message there.
Yeah.
And if we're not on a daily basis grinding through this stuff, and again, I'm talking about the plan of salvation, but trying to influence every aspect of our lives with
What can I do?
yeah.
What can I do?
What can I do with
to
this person?
further-
What can I do with this situation?
What can I
in
do
this
to
event?
further
Yeah.
the kingdom of God
It's
in
like-
this world?
It's like it's constantly in the back of your mind, and no matter what you're doing, you're just trying to figure out how can I influence my neighbor, my friends, my family, my community. I'm just, because I believe so strongly in this, and I know it's going to have such a positive impact on them that I can't even be quiet about it.
Right.
You know.
All right.
Genesis.
Genesis 18 says Abraham, well, not the direct quote, this is a paraphrase. Abraham begged for Sodom to be saved on behalf of the righteous in the city, but there was not enough righteous, not even 10. So God came into judgment. And if there was just only 10 people, God would have.
It was in a minority.
Yeah.
Extreme
He was a
minority.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we want to talk about some evil cities like in the past, right? And this is a city, by the way. You notice that? So we are talking about nations, but cities too.
Yeah.
Should we have influence in our city? I think we have a better influence in our city than we do a nation, right? Because it's more intimate, I guess you could say. The conglomeration of Christians within cities should have. And why is it that cities become, I guess, we could say evil, I guess, right? Big cities become more evil than like other places.
Like rural areas.
Yeah, like, you ever wonder why that is?
This is a perfect time to bring in a comment.
Okay.
If we're focused on saving souls, then we will improve our nation. The best way to defeat an enemy is to make him your friend.
Right.
Our job is to be saving souls.
Yep.
And if we are saving souls, a lot of this stuff will take care of itself.
Right. Yep.
That's right.
It's just not the only.
It's
Well,
just
no,
not-
no. So
Yeah,
It's the primary.
Yeah. It should always be our primary objective to
that's
save
the primary
souls.
objective.
But we should be looking at any way that we can influence, because when I'm thinking, if I love my neighbor and I know that there is a philosophical approach that's really better for them, whether they know it or not, I just think I should fight for that, right? You know,
And a lot of people reject the gospel.
Yep.
right? And we still have to live around people who reject the gospel.
Yeah.
And how to deal with that is kind of what we're talking about, right? And because God's way is a better way. And if they reject it, then, somebody's going to rule
Yep.
in a nation. Somebody's going to rule. And Christians' goal is for God and Christ to be the ruler of a nation, right?
Yep.
Because if he's not, then I think we know who else is then, right?
Yeah.
The rule of the world, Satan himself will rule the nation.
Right.
And that's never good. That's never good.
Yep.
Also in Genesis 18, no one stood up to tell the mob they were wrong, not even Lot. So this is kind of like we were talking about before, being passive. Lot was kind of that passive figure. Imagine the kind of influence he might have had if he would have said, well, he did tell them that this is evil, right? Like when they were trying to
He tried
get to
to
the
hand
angel.
them his daughters.
But the way he handled that, he said, this is evil. Here's my daughters. Like, don't substitute one evil for another, right? Like, goodness.
Yeah.
And,
Well, that's what corruption does. I mean, it's just,
right.
I mean, he would have been, it seems like the people kind of knew that he was different.
Sure. They probably were testing him.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Obviously, he didn't pass the test, I don't think. And he tried to appease. Just like we talked about the European countries to Germany, appease, right?
Yep.
When you appease, evil is not satisfied.
Yeah.
It will continue to devolve.
Yeah.
You cannot appease evil enough. Ever. I mean, you can just look at history to know that. We have responsibility. Oh, there's that word again, responsibility. To be that righteous and to be the salt of the earth, to keep the nation from judgment as much as we are capable of. I think it's going back to that comment. First priority is to convert hearts, to show them there is a better way, right?
Yeah.
To show them that God's way equals good. Now, it also equals potential suffering, right? So I don't think we can be like the prosperity gospel, that you're going to be rich if you just believe in God, because that's from Satan himself too, okay? But ultimately that doing it God's way does lead to better lives if it's practiced properly, right? And because that's how God designed it. Marriage between a man and a woman for life. That's how God designed it. Men and women, like when you are married, you think about the other person more than yourself. That's how he designed it. And when you do it that way, you have a good marriage. And you raise children to know God, right?
By the way, there's no pun intended here on that comment of salt of the earth and the correlation of Lot.
Yes, quite unfortunate for his wife when it comes to salt. Isn't that interesting, a pillar of salt, though? Why a pillar of salt? You ever wonder that?
No, maybe that's a subject of another.
I know. Is that like
Podcast.
symbolism for something? I don't know, right?
Since I threw this passage in here,
Okay,
I'll
go
I'll give you a break. But this passage, we were visiting a congregation up in Ocala just last week, and we were in class, and they're too trying to encourage people to evangelize, because that is going to be the best way. But that's another story, because I don't think we're as effective, at doing that as we should be. But this again, when I said earlier about the fig tree, I envision myself as being sort of the fig tree, and that if I don't bear fruit, God's going to judge. This passage really drives this point home, and I don't really hear this passage mentioned in a lot of evangelism classes. So Ezekiel 3:17 through 21, I'm just going to read every word of it. Son of man, I have appointed you a watchman for the house of Israel. He's talking to Israel as a whole. Whenever you hear a word from my mouth, you must give them a warning from me. When I say to the wicked, you will certainly die, and you do not warn him, you do not speak out to warn the wicked to turn from his wicked lifestyle so that he may live, that wicked person will die for his iniquity. But I will hold you accountable for his death. But as for you, if you warn the wicked and he does not turn from his wicked deed and from his wicked lifestyle, he will die for his iniquity, but you will have saved your own life. Did I read that right? If you warn the wicked and he does not turn. Okay, so basically he's saying, in the first case, you didn't say anything, and you're going to be held accountable for his demise. In this case, if you do say something and they don't listen, he's not going to hold us accountable. That's what he's saying here. So when a righteous person turns from his righteousness and commits iniquity, and I set an obstacle before him, he will die. If you have not warned him, he will die for his sin. The righteous deeds he performed will not be considered, but I will hold you accountable for his death. However, if you warn the righteous person not to sin, and he does not sin, he will certainly live because he was warned, and you will have saved your own life. So that's a lot of, we're accountable for teaching the gospel. We can't just sit around and hope people are going to be saved. We need to be working for it, because God says, if you withhold this and someone perishes because you didn't warn them, I'm going to hold you accountable too.
Question. Does this also apply to deeds?
In helping people,
Like standing for what's right against the wicked? Is it
so
just,
standing up for truth in general.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, is it just about telling them? Or is it also like my responsibility towards, I don't know, like, it could be laws, it could be something going on in my job, right? That I stand
Preventing
up for
murder.
truth. What's that?
Preventing murder.
Preventing a murder. It could be a lot of things that could apply to, right? That if we stand by and do nothing and let this wickedness continue, are we held accountable for that?
And think of a passage that distinguishes.
I can't either. We'll get to more of that later, though, but let's keep that in mind for sure, okay? And we're talking more individual. God rules nations, yet the moral condition of a people still matters. Human choices have real consequences. We all have choice. We've all been given choice by our Creator, all the way from the beginning, right? And I hate to be cliche again, but with great power comes great responsibility. So the power that He gives us with choice means that we're responsible for those choices. Too many times, I think in our culture, we have a blame game mentality. That we're a victim. I can't do this because of that, or I can't do this because of this. And we don't take on responsibility. We want to shutter that responsibility off to other things that are out of our control, we think. I've had that mentality. I mean, I think it's just something that helps us think, we know we need to do something, but I can't do it for whatever reason, right? We can't be like that, especially when it comes to the gospel and, like we said, teaching others what is right and wrong. It's not about what we think what is right and wrong. That's irrelevant. What I think is right and wrong is totally irrelevant if it's outside of Scripture. It's only about what God says is right and wrong. So, but yeah, it's choices have consequences, no doubt.
Sure.
What does this mean? If righteousness impacts a nation, so each individual person in a nation, righteousness can impact that nation that they're in, right? Then participation in shaping that righteousness matters. Again, what does letting your light shine mean? That means that I have to know, first of all, what is righteous. Then I have to take on that righteousness, and then I have to let others see it. And that's an influence we can have on the nation.
Right.
And we have to, like it says here, shape ourselves to that. And we can't hide it under a bushel, right? It has to be put on a lampstand. And if you are ashamed of the gospel, Jesus says, I'll be ashamed of you.
Yeah. And since that last bullet isn't listed in the presentation, I just want to repeat it one more time because I think it resonates with me. If righteousness impacts a nation, then participation in shaping that righteousness matters. So we just have one more section, and we'll probably wrap it up for questions. But I wanted to read something, and I think this will kind of wrap up at least this section, and then in terms of how we think about things. Okay. So if you disagree, raise your hand. All right. God's primary mission for his people is the salvation of souls through the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's Matthew 28, 18 through 20. Obviously, there's other verses. Yet the same God who saves souls also establishes nations and governing authorities to restrain evil and uphold justice. Romans 13, 1 through 4. Therefore, Christians do not choose between evangelism and moral influence. They are called to both. As citizens of heaven, believers proclaim the gospel as citizens on earth. They are responsible to seek justice, protect life, and promote righteousness within the societies where God has placed them. Engagement in civic and political processes is not a replacement for the gospel, nor a distraction from it. It is one way Christians love their neighbor, oppose evil, and bear witness to God's moral order in the world. The church must never become partisan or place its hope in human power. However, individual Christians should not withhold from influencing the structures that shape justice and morality. Faithfulness requires both proclaiming salvation and living out God's standards in every sphere of life, including the public square. Any disagreement on that?
If we truly love what is good and abhor what is evil, but we do absolutely nothing about it, are we truly loving what is good and abhorring what is evil? Or are we just talking the talk instead of walking the walk?
You know, again, that word abhor, it's an emotional word, you know, when you just think about it. And you're exactly right, Caleb. If we abhor evil, we can't help but respond and react to that. We don't even want to let it go. I mean, we don't even want to hold it in, you know, right? So this last piece, we want to tie in some extra biblical reinforcement here. So
Before you get to that, I have a quick question.
Okay, go ahead.
We abhor evil. We live in a nation that for over 50 years in our laws, we have had the right for people to murder their own children. Do we abhor that? Or is it just something that, oh, yeah, it's nothing I could do about? It's just part of our laws. If we do abhor it, what are we doing about it?
I think that's
of course,
when you know.
You're going to try to teach the gospel to the women who might be thinking about it. That should be first priority. But if they refuse, right, the gospel, which people do, they refuse Jesus and the gospel. What do we do about the evil then? Let it continue or not? Now, I'm just using abortion as just one example because it's probably the number one priority, I think. It should be, as an example. There are things we can do if we truly abhor it. So I just wanted to make that comment real quick.
Well, I think if you abhor it, your actions will demonstrate that. I mean, you don't even have to tell me that. I'll just know. But I think that's a really good example. This is kind of how I think about it. If we can preach the gospel to individuals we can change their hearts and minds, and they won't do that act, right? But in the meantime, while we're killing, maybe 1 million a year, I don't know what the number is.
That's about average.
Yeah. I can also help influence the laws to save those lives while I'm doing everything I can here. And guess what? I'm going to save a lot of lives.
Correct.
More than I could ever do individually. And then I'll have the opportunity to teach them the gospel. But right now I can't, I don't even have the opportunity to do that. So.
And that is multiple ways that we can influence the nations and stand up for what is right and abhor evil.
But we have people, go ahead.
So one modification of what you just said. I think we need to create the opportunity to spread the gospel to those people.
Right.
And we do that by engaging in this political war.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. No. Fair point. I was going to say something. You have a question?
Is there a point when righteous people in a wicked nation should just kind of not give up, but kind of just go to a different nation, or should they continue to be a light and salt to the people around them? Like,
Are
at what
you
point
talking
is there
about
like-
nations or states?
Both. Both.
Okay.
I mean, because there's Christians in like maybe the Middle East or other parts of the world, like South
Sure.
Africa. We know there's persecution of Christians in certain parts of the world. Is there a point where they should just say, "Hey, like we're gonna not that's the necessary persecution, but towards like, all right, they're kind of too far gone, we're just gonna leave," or should they continue to preach the gospel in that?
I mean, if you're asking me that question, this is an opinion. I don't think it's a mandate, right? I think it's up to the individual and the situation they're in.
I would answer that by going to 1 Kings 18 or 19. I can't remember off the top of my head. Elijah.
Oh,
Elijah thought all was lost. He was the only person left.
God revealed to him.
God tell him, hey, there's still 7,000 people.
yeah.
You don't know. The bottom line. Like, you do the best you can with every opportunity you can. And don't give up hope. God will make it work somehow.
I do think it's a little different when you're talking about within the United States and different states. It really, again, depends on like your situation.
Yes,
If
but
you-
at the same time, so there are definitely opportunities out there. I actually have a
Correct.
cousin that just moved out to LA specifically to teach and preach the gospel. That is what he does, and there is opportunity there. It's not that it's impossible.
No.
Sure, there are difficulties, but there are difficulties everywhere. And the situation worked out, and he felt his calling was to follow it there and preach to the people there who needed it.
And at the same time, you could have a young family that you don't want to be influenced by the laws of that particular state.
Yeah.
You think it might be best to move to another state.
Well, and that was actually a very important part of that calculation. Is that his children had already grown in age, so
Right.
that was no longer an issue.
Correct. So that's why I said it could be different circumstances. It depends on the circumstance, really. As my children get older, I think that gives me more freedoms to do stuff, right? To be influential. It depends on situations, because you could do both and be right, I think, in doing those things.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I don't know. I kind of go by, I don't know what it is, instinct or conscious, and sometimes I'll put myself in a precarious situation just because I feel like I'm being called to do that. But I can see where you should do that until you feel like you and your family are being threatened. And I think there's also precedent for leaving, just leaving the situation. We've had my son-in-law's parents, went through Pol Pot, that regime, and Vietnam and Cambodia through the really tough years, and his dad, saw people killed. He was threatened He would die if he didn't do certain things after he was separated from his family. They made these people work in the fields. If you ever see the movie The Killing Fields, you should watch it. It's kind of like a B type movie because it's not as nice as some of the newer cinema. It's an older movie, but when we watched it with my son-in-law's father, he was tearing up watching that because it brought up all these memories that he had. They left. I mean, it was just so bad that they left. Now, it wasn't necessarily for religious reasons, but it was for freedom.
And to be honest with you, sometimes God opens doors. You have to be aware, and recognize that, oh, wait, I was thinking this, but now this door is open. Maybe that's what
Yeah.
it's
I think you need to
discretion.
pray about it.
Yeah, pray about it, definitely.
But
It's about discretion. And
I would just make sure that what you're doing is not because of fear or cowardice. That's the main thing.
Right.
That's all.
I've kind of like one more add-on question. Do you think that at any point we should let a nation just kind of fall, or like a state, maybe not a state, but like a nation just kind of fall? Like it's wicked, it's evil. Should we just at one point just be like, all right, we're just gonna let them, do their thing where we're just kind of not necessarily get out of there, but I mean, we see the Old Testament examples of God judging nations and getting rid of them. Do you
That's
think
up to
the
God,
same
though,
now?
right?
Yeah, I agree.
For us, we always have influence, no matter what the situation is. And we should keep doing that.
Yeah, we also have the example of Jonah.
Yes.
It's not our place to judge whether or not it's the nation's time to fall.
Jonah did not want to go to Nineveh because he didn't like them. He didn't think they deserved it. God determines who deserves what. We just have to reflect that from us. God reflects it on us to other nations and other people, right?
Yeah.
Another question?
No, comment actually adding on to what y'all were saying. I think we have seen the lowest of low, well, maybe not lowest of low, but really low bar what a country can get to, and that would be Nazi Germany, and we didn't let them continue, otherwise they'd be ruling us right now. At some point, if a country is such a huge threat and that evil, they have to be dealt with by us through either God's will or whatever.
Dealt with. Interesting. Maybe. I do think that, the U.S. stayed out of it until we were attacked. Should we have, though? That's history, though, right?
That's a very complicated question.
Yep.
'Cause
That's no one-word answer we
Yeah,
can give
and I don't think we'll ever
the rest of the
know
night.
the details around that to even be able to. But so I just want to wrap this up. So there is some historical and extra biblical reinforcement for what we're saying, and we're gonna quote some people you hopefully are familiar with. John Adams. And really what we're interjecting these things because from the Pilgrims all the way through to the founding of our nation, there was one thing that really stood out, and that was people wanted religious freedom. That's why they came here. And so when we get to the writing of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, there's language just embedded in there because that wasn't forgotten over those.
There's a difference between religious freedom and freedom from religion, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, we won't get into all that right now.
Yeah. So John Adams, and again, we're just quoting these just to share with you the fact that our founding forefathers were really hoping that we would hang on to our Christian heritage because that was the kind of the foundation of everything we did. So this is a quote: "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people." So they understood that for this particular institution to survive based on how they designed it, it was going to require a moral people. And if you read further in some of their writings, they'll say, we hope you can keep it, because they had some skepticism that we would be able to hang on.
Benjamin Franklin.
Yep. George Washington, in his farewell address, he warned that religion and Benjamin Franklin is, or, well, even George Washington, they're sometimes called deists, but anyway, in his farewell address, he warned that religion and morality are indispensable supports of political prosperity. So they understood that you have to have some sort of moral ethic
Objective.
underpinning this whole thing, right? And
It must be objective. It cannot be a subjective
Yeah.
morality.
right. And the thing is, I had someone I talked to a few months ago say, well, we can't push Christian morality on people. I said, well, what morality do you want to push? Because anything else is going to be devastating.
Once again, somebody will rule
Yeah.
or something.
Yep. And then finally, Thomas Jefferson, who was also questioned as a deist, but acknowledged that the rights come from a creator, not a government. I mean, we have those words right in there, creator, and so on, built right into the Constitution. So the way they looked at it was God ruled over the people, which ruled over the Constitution, which ruled over the government. That's the way they set this thing up. Government was on the bottom end, and yet you have people that are not engaging in this process for whatever reason, because they just for some reason think that the legislative process, and they actually kind of convey it in a very condescending way. I'm going to save souls while you go and maybe support the legislative process. I mean, it's like it's worded that way, and it's like, well, wait a minute, can't we walk and chew gum at the same time? I mean, and am I not responsible to do both? I mean, if I see a woman getting assaulted, am I going to preach the gospel to the assaulter, or am I going to defend her at that point first? And I don't know why we say we can only do one without the other. I think we're obligated to do both. So anyway, another question.
So this one's somewhat on topic, somewhat not. I don't really know how to phrase it, but I'll try my best. At what point, where in the sand is it okay to be, fighting fleshly for God? For example, the Crusades are constantly, I'd say, looked down upon as, a not-so-good example, which I personally disagree, but that's a whole other conversation. So what would be, the line in the sand to say that, oh, this person who was fighting in these wars was a Christian and was fighting for God, and that's okay, and the other side, if there is another where that's not okay? Where's the distinction, and why, and where's that distinction when it comes to the Crusades?
Are we supposed to turn the other cheek if a nation attacks us? I mean, I'll start off, and then we'll maybe move closer to the middle, but I think self-defense is obviously, I believe, and I think Scripture teaches it, that is, that's something God, allows, right? So if a nation attacks us, I don't think we should be concerned at all from a biblical perspective that we have the right to defend ourselves.
Because you asked that, I'm not prepared for it yet, but there is something in the recesses of my mind where I think there's a book or something about what defines moral wars, I guess you could say. How can you know that you're fighting for something moral? And there's a list that the book goes over that says, these criteria need to be met to know that whatever you're fighting for is moral. And of course, it's going to be, there's not one thing that's going to be the same in every situation, okay? But it is up to a Christian to try to figure that out, I think, in the individual, and to say, can I put myself in that situation where I would have to fight? And is it a moral thing to do? And every situation is going to be different too. My commander says to do this, but I believe it'd be immoral to do that, and I can't do that. They have to go through that. It's so complicated is the point, right? It's not just one, okay, then, because the Nazi soldiers used that as an excuse to do atrocities. I was just following orders, right? So there's no one size fit all to that kind of a question. Not at a national scale or even an individual scale, I don't think. But are there moral wars where you're fighting against evil? Of course. I mean, there's examples in history, I believe, where a nation was moral fighting against an immoral nation. But again, it's pretty complicated, wouldn't you say?
We could do an entire class just on that subject.
Correct. Several classes.
Yeah, the other thing I would throw in there is does the United States have a moral obligation, given its strength and power? Because if you're in a small nation, you may not like something, but when you look at your resources, there's probably not much you can do about it. But as a bigger nation, if you see, like Iran's slaughtering, I think the low number is 20,000.
I saw 35.
Yeah, I've heard the number's been going up. At what point does another nation get involved in that? Because here you have people being slaughtered, and my instinct tells me I got to stop that. I mean, the regime is evil, and they're slaughtering their people. I don't know that I would feel justified in just sitting back and saying, well, let's just wait, because maybe I'm the nation that God has created to take care of this. And so now you start to get into, some interesting.
But that gets into the weeds too, because then like every nation around the world we should get involved in.
Yeah.
So it's not even that simple either.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have that kind of resources, right? To
And
police
then
the nation.
on the other hand, we're here in this country, we're slaughtering more than that many every single month.
That's right. There's all kinds. We could go down so many different avenues.
So let's finish this up, and then if we have any further questions, we can follow up. But just to summarize this last section, and if you have a question, just remain there. We'll get it. The founding fathers largely assumed that rights came from God. Moral order is necessary for freedom, and that self-government requires self-restraint. What does this mean? They were not building a theocracy. We want to make sure that that's clear. We aren't promoting a theocracy. We aren't promoting even nationalism. We had a conversation about that, and we want to be clear on how we define that anyway. I always ask people, well, how do you define that? We are not building. We are not advocating for a theocracy, but they clearly rejected a morally neutral public square. They knew that some ethic was going to have to prevail, and they thought that the Christian ethic was the only way, the best way to run a nation. We are not elevating a nation. We are still placing it under God, which by implication means let's implement the Christian ethic in this nation. I think we should.
One nation under God.
Every nation. Yeah. So anyway, I think
it's worth noting that in Plato's Republic, Socrates, he's in the middle of setting up, they're creating the ideal government system, an ideal, basically social construct. He gets the section on, okay, how do you deal with the religion? Now, he specifically was a servant of Apollos, but when he got to that section, he specifically said, basically, I'm going to leave this up to the priests to figure that part out. I'm not going to get into the weeds with that. But the point is that he had a assumption that in creating this republic, they would be serving God. They would be serving their God. You can't just completely eliminate religion from the social construct and expect it to function well. Mm-hmm. It's going to fall apart without it.
Yeah, because then you have basically an atheist in charge, and they don't have grounding. They're not grounded in anything. Then you get into secular humanism and all these kinds of things, and now it's just might makes right, because if
it's your preferences.
Yeah. You have to have something bigger than yourself guiding and judging you. So, yeah, go ahead.
How does the phrase or verse, I can't remember if it came from a verse or not, "This world is not my home," fit into all of this? Because I know that's the first thing that a lot of Christians will say against all of the stuff we're talking about here. One of the first and major things that they'll argue against this.
Isn't that the next one?
Well, I would say
we addressed
short a very short answer for that kind of goes back to the point we made earlier. Is that if you're our primary job here is to save souls, and if we were saying, all right, we're just going to not do anything at all because this world is not my home, then we're basically saying, whatever, and we're leaving entire sections or entire areas of people just.
You don't love your neighbors yourself.
Exactly. We're saying, forget you. We're not going to even deal with that at all. We're going to concentrate. We're just going to say, whatever.
If that's what you mean by it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we need to be spreading the gospel to everyone we possibly can, and creating situations where we can spread the gospel. I mean, if we were to say, well, let's just completely ignore all political stuff whatsoever. I'm like, oh, well, I mean, you can do that, but if you want an example of what happens when you do that, try going over to China and spread the gospel over there. It's not that it's impossible, but it's very difficult over there. Very difficult to get people to listen to you when they're going to be severely punished just for being in that room with you. I mean, that's a problem. And we need to be working on creating the scenarios to where we can spread the gospel.
Make the environment the best that we can for that. Next.
So would you say America is a righteous nation?
How do you define righteous?
Would you define us as wicked?
How you
If you
define
had to
wicked?
Keep going.
Go down, continue.
We're just using the Socratic method here, just trying to
We
get
do
you to
have to
answer
define
yourself.
words, though. You have to define words what you mean.
So what would you define? Would you say there's any righteous nations in the world right now? And if so, what nation would it be? Or what nations would it be?
What are nations made up of?
People, territories, borders, governments.
Is there anybody good? Is there
No.
anyone good? There's your answer.
So we say all nations are wicked?
It's probably relative, right? I mean, some nations are going to be worse than others because
Correct.
we're probably all nations have elements of evil, but it's interesting. I think Hungary is one of them, and then it might be Zimbabwe, where they're actually adopting the biblical perspective in their constitution. They actually just recently,
I think it's Hungary.
well, I know how Hungary is one of them, but they're adopting the Christian ethic. So what you're going to have is nations that are just more righteous than others, and nations more wicked than others.
We should continually be pushing
Which is really
nations to righteousness.
Which is really no different than people, right? I mean, none of us, if we really want to admit about it, there's a wicked tendency in all of us, right? Now, some people are going to be more righteous than others, some people are going to be more wicked, but you probably find the same in nations.
Right.
That was a good, just tell us, that was a good answer.
I might say that, but because I think when we look around the world, we see, especially in our nation, like abortion because I think abortion is one of the most wicked things that a nation can really approve of. Transitioning children, all those other things that we have. Like where would that rank? And I'm not just like we're trying to rank nations on being wicked or righteous, but where would that kind of play into it?
Think about this. We have been allowing the abortion for a long time, but recently what has happened? There's been a push against it
There has
by
but
righteous people.
there has
Not
been,
righteous
but-
people, but people who promote righteousness, right?
Well, that's actually an excellent example of our problem that we're trying to show here. Is that with the Dobbs decision, we've actually seen a reversal in a way. Like basically the concept of opposing abortion. It's like, all right, it's no longer a national right. We're good to go. And well, hey, we're missing the point here. We need to be going after the souls. We need to be going after the root of the problem. And a lot of the pro-life movement has fallen flat on its face the past couple of years because they have not been pursuing the real root of the problem. And at the state level, a lot of the states have ramped it up even further. And there's a lot of people who are getting even louder.
Satan's not going to be defeated that easy.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
He won't be.
Yeah.
We have to continue to push righteousness, for righteousness, especially when it comes to. Well, we're going to get more into the ramifications of baby sacrifice in other nations and what it means and how it evolves a nation. Because if you can't get that right, you're not going to get a lot of things right.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's been pushback, though. There has been pushback. We need to continue it. Yes, absolutely. But there's been pushback on transgenderism, too. There's been some laws now that's coming that are not allowing those surgeries anymore to children. So there's not a static, like, oh, is a country righteous? It's ebb and flows. And as people who claim to be for God and Christ is in our lives, we have to have those influences in the nation
Right.
in order for a nation to be more righteous than it was before. There can never be a standard, a nation is righteous or not. Does that make sense? It's not an either or thing.
So at that point, would that be a lot on the leaders at that point? If the people are righteous or seeking righteousness, right? But the leaders are not righteous, or they're kind of not going towards it.
Why wouldn't leaders be righteous?
I can go kind of deep into that. I mean, it depends on the reason of why they want to be in leadership.
Either, number one, leaders will try to dupe the people to say that I'm going to do this, but they're really not, their heart's not there. That happens, of course. A lot of times it's the righteous people literally just advocating that. And they're not trying to influence leaders. They try to, that's something I don't even worry about.
One thing I would say, though, because I've been thinking about this, I think God does tell us the types of sins that he draws the line on. I mean, and you just have to look at the cities that in the nation he destroyed. And then, because the Bible kind of starts, sometimes it's not real clear, but we know why Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. I mean, like there's a lot of sin that leads up to that point. And it's like once a nation starts getting on this track, like we've been killing babies for 50 years, that's in like God's like destroy you territory. I mean, because I think it was the Canaanites that sacrificed babies to their gods, and he said, "I've had it with you." So it's we just have to look at the examples in the Bible where God destroyed cities and look at the reasons why. And I think that will only tell us where God has had it. He's had it.
And think about why it is like baby or child sacrifice. Why is that one of God's maybe red lines, right?
The most innocent.
It's the most innocent.
Yeah.
They are the purest form of a human, I guess you could get in this earth. And you are so depraved and so evil in thought that you're going to destroy that innocent life. Can you come back from that evil? I don't know. I mean, you can. We could always repent, right? But that is something that if that is your mentality, it's going to be really tough for you to come to the truth. And when countries and nations do it as a policy, that nation just devolves into chaos. And again, this is something we're going to talk about a little bit later because it's relevant. But if you can't get that right, you're not going to get a lot of other things right.
Right.
And when nations don't get a lot of things right, it just causes chaos and it brings down those nations. Look at Rome. I mean, Rome was brought down because of lack of morality. As nations devolve in morality, that's when they dissolve as a nation.
Yeah.
And it should be a lesson for us today in this current nation, for sure.
So I have one more question. Plenty, but I'll give you one more. So we talked, I know Kayla mentioned the laws. We know there's laws changing with transgenderism and abortion, right? What's the next step for us? Because even though there's laws, we're not changing hearts. And as Kayla mentioned, that we're here to save souls. So like, what's the next step for us when it comes to
Again, that's not an either or. You do both. You do both. You say, I'm going to try to teach people the truth. At the same time, I'm not going to let people destroy innocent human beings.
Well, I'm saying like after like the law has been passed, right? Like if abortion's been limited, how are we now able to kind of talk to people and change their hearts and kind of change that? Because even though there's a law against it, the law doesn't mean that their hearts are still not in a bad spot.
The scripture.
I think it starts with not being lazy.
Well, doing it, yes.
And then we need to have a plan in mind. Like I think we need to go, like if we need to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. We got to be able to speak to the people who are in those positions and save their souls. We need to have a plan, and we need to actively pursue that plan and do as
see
hard
what
as
you're
we
saying.
can.
You're saying practically what should we do?
Yeah, like what's the next
Okay.
step? Because the laws don't make a nation righteous.
Because I've thought about some of the things what can I do
Yeah.
recently. What is some of the hotbeds of maybe where God is not there in our country?
In our country right now.
Yep. It's pretty
Man.
easy. Come on, think about it.
You
What's a
think
hotbed of
like cities or like places like
places like that people gather or go to a lot?
clubs? You talking about like clubs? You talking about colleges?
There you go.
Oh, okay.
College. That's
Okay.
what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Colleges, right? Because those are institutions that teach a lot of things
Yeah.
that are not right. So going to colleges and speaking with the young minds that we talked about that are being influenced by evil. Maybe going to one thing that we can have a direct impact on is our school system.
Yeah.
Going to board meetings. Again, these are just things I'm thinking about for me, right? I'm not saying you all have to do it, but you're asking, and I'm telling you maybe some practical things, right? Maybe, I know when I was younger, I remember listening all the time that a lot of preachers like went to USF and had debates. And I don't really hear that much anymore. That preachers in our area, I'm talking about in our area and here in Tampa, right? That would have these debates at USF and stuff with other, I don't know, maybe other Christians or even atheists. So maybe more setting those things up again, and that allows people to see it.
Something really, really simple
Mm-hmm.
that Floridians could have done in the last election was vote against Amendment 4. I mean,
What's Amendment 4, Caleb?
abortion was nearly put on the state constitution. And not just, I'm talking like full out, no limit abortion. It was,
It got over half.
yeah,
by the way.
it was 56%.
It takes 60. They got 56.
I think it was 56.4 or something like that, if I remember
So
correctly.
here's a good example of what we've been talking about all night, right there. Yes, we are aware that we have to change hearts because 56% is a lot. The ultimate goal is to change the heart so it's not 56%. At the same time, right, we go vote and say no to that so it doesn't hit the 60% and become an actual law and a part of the Florida Constitution.
Right.
Do you see how you could do both at the same time?
So how can we not just vote? Because some people will just go, well, I voted for it, like I'm good. Like, well, what are ways we can talk about why we voted for things and go out there, if you kind of get what I'm saying? Because some people say, well, I voted against it.
We're
like,
doing it
I'm
right
good.
now.
Yeah, but I'm also talking about like practical, not just college. I'm just thinking about ways that I can do stuff too.
No, I'm saying we're doing it right now.
Yeah,
The
but-
podcast, like you could, there's different avenues that we have in technology now we could use, right?
Well, it's like, if you have a plan in mind for how to address someone who is in that position, and you got to have it so, you have people who have had abortions before, and you got a spectrum of those. Some of them have regretted it, and some of them they're shouting it and proud of it. You got to be careful with your approach in there. But I would say you got to figure out the best way to approach each of them, that whole group, and actually put yourself in the environment where they are. College campus is a fantastic example of that, and address that specifically. Street preaching gets a lot of bad flack sometimes, but there is a place for it. And there are some, I've seen there are some people that actually are very good at it.
And there's a way to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
To make it.
Yeah, all I would add to that is I read, I can't remember who the author was, but he talked about your sphere of influence.
Right.
We all have different spheres of influence. So you can start there immediately. And it's just paying attention to people, creating relationships, and getting to know as much as you can about them and get them to open up, because you're not going to jump on a conversation about abortion unless, the person may be interested in hearing about that or may have a need for it. So, but as Christians, we should be doing everything we can to expand our spheres of influence,
There you go. Yes.
and so that we touch more and more people and more institutions, more, the communities, the neighbors. It's like in our neighborhood, Lori and I, when we try to walk around the neighborhood and we take time to say hello and try to engage with people. And like I said, there's a neighbor down the block we invited here because we have that kind of relationship with him. So I think you'll have enough to keep you busy with just your friends and your coworkers, but keep
Always
expanding
looking to
that.
expand, yeah.
So you like kind of be intentional, like
Yeah,
be intentional about
intentional.
preaching the gospel.
Exactly
not
right.
everything. Okay.
Yeah.
Always have it at the forefront of your mind
Right.
I guess.
to bring something up.
Yeah. So your goal is to preach the gospel by all means, but don't negate all these other ways that we can help our neighbors,
Right.
So
I got a
Now-
comment.
okay.
Someone asked a question here from the chat.
Perfect.
Go ahead. Okay. All right. Hang on a second. So just I'm having some technical difficulty with this
We would
one.
have taken difficulties.
Here. So basically, she's saying that there's a clinic here in Tampa called Choices, and they're specifically going to people who are in the position of making that choice. And there's other similar things where they're going to the mothers who are about to make that choice, trying to convince them, hey, there is another way, there's another option, trying to give them help, you can help them monetarily or even with advice and giving them a path. So hey, there is a better way, and helping them through that, not just saying, don't do it, and then good luck with the rest. No,
Preborn?
actually,
Is that the name of it? Preborn?
preborn, yes, is another
one of them?
Yeah.
Yep.
well, and I even think our preacher, doesn't he try to bring, I'm gonna say unwanted, but just he's trying to arrange for adoptions.
That's, what is the name of that?
Adoptions.
Yeah, the adoptions of,
Well, there's several different adoption
Yeah,
agencies.
but what's the one that-
Sacred Selection?
Sacred Selection,
My parents
yeah.
are part of.
Yeah.
that's the one I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
Sacred
Yeah, so
Selection.
he's got a network, and he knows people with money that help pay for the whole thing.
Is that Sacred Selections, I think?
I don't know what the name
I think
is.
that's what it is.
But
There's
he-
a couple of them that
Yeah.
do that. Yeah.
Right.
But he's got these connections. So when he hears about a woman that is pregnant but doesn't want the baby, then they try to help pay for the medical expenses and then find a.
Yep.
So I mean, there's all these little things and as you pass through life, you're gonna
Yeah.
see more opportunities to do
experiences.
stuff. But the thing is, and I appreciate someone your age asking the question, because you still got to look for the opportunities.
Correct.
If you're just going through, society and life with your blinders on, you're going to miss all the opportunities to help people out in these ways. So anyway, let's.
One more thing though, before we go. Personal story. When I met my wife, she wasn't a Christian. I was, but before we were in dating, we got to know each other as a friend in the office, right? And call me crazy or whatever, but one of the first serious discussions we ever had was about abortion. And I just tried to, logically let her go step by step. And it's something that she never even really thought about that deep. She just said, yeah, it's a choice. Yeah, that sounds right. But then as I kind of went step by step with her, right, it changed her mind. That was even before we were dating or anything, right? But you have to be willing to have those conversations and not be afraid. Oh, this is a work environment. I can't say anything. It was at lunch, It wasn't like, oh, we're supposed to be working, but it was at lunch. You take those opportunities and you never know where it's going to go. Like a wife, but I don't know. That's what it was for me.
Yeah. So we pretty much
All right.
discussed the sovereignty of God over nations. The next class is going to be on why did he establish nations in the first place. So we'll cover that. Maybe another topic. We'll see how it goes. So, but anyway, thanks you all for being here live, and for those who joined us on Discord or
All the
YouTube,
questions.
we appreciate it.
All right. I think that's it for tonight.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.